There was a time when Singapore was the model. People looked at its streets, its schools, its public systems and called it the Asian miracle. Not just because it was rich, but because it was clean, ordered, efficient, and safe. That version of Singapore still exists, but it has become so normal to those who live in it. They forget what it once represented. Today, there is another place that sees what Singapore used to offer, and wants it. That place is the rising middle class across Tier 2 cities in China. They want safety. They want structure. They want calm, polite service. Predictable systems. Trust in education. They want what Singaporeans experienced in the early 2000s, when the country still felt full of promise, not pressure. And here is the opportunity. As China's middle class grows, they are not just spending more. They are aspiring towards something. They want upward mobility, but not through chaos. They want progress, but with peace. They want modern services that feel personal and thoughtful, not loud or rushed. These are exactly the values Singaporeans grew up with. But while we moved on, they are just arriving at the point where they crave it. Let us be specific. In cities like Chengdu, Changsha, and Hefei, there is a growing appetite for structured enrichment classes for children. Clean and calming health and wellness spaces. Efficient and well-designed everyday retail. Polite and queue-based service culture. And systems that are fair and predictable. In short, they want the Singapore experience. Not the ultra-modern skyline version, but the one that delivered a quiet, consistent, safe lifestyle. For example, a Singaporean-style enrichment center focused on critical thinking and creative learning attracts high trust, simply because it feels different from rigid test-focused prep. A small health food cafe with simple, clean lines and neutral branding. No neon, no shouting. Instantly signals quality. Not because of marketing, but because of feel. Even a small consultancy helping parents with overseas school applications, health routines, or productivity tools gets attention. Because it represents something calm, global, and helpful. And in a market still catching up, that feels premium. Here is the twist. These are not complicated ideas. They are familiar. They are what many Singaporeans have always known. But in China's Tier 2 cities, they are new. And because they are new, they are valued. The second insight is this. The middle class in China is moving fast but still unevenly. People have money but they lack trust. They want services they can believe in. They want brands and people who deliver what they say, when they say it. And that is where Singaporeans stand out. You do not need to sell luxury. You just need to deliver reliability. And reliability, when others cannot provide it, becomes your brand. So think about the Singaporean traits that most locals now kind of overlook. Cleanliness, efficiency, quiet professionalism, structured child development, functional design and respect for systems. These aren't just trends, these are fundamentals. And in Tier 2 cities in China, fundamentals are now seen as the upgrade. Let us talk numbers for a moment. The average disposable income of middle-class households in cities like Hangzhou, Xi'an, and Qingdao now exceeds $13,000 per year. That might sound a bit modest compared to Singapore. But it is going up every year, and more importantly, consumer behavior is changing. They are no longer buying to survive, instead, they're buying to improve. These days, they're paying for outcomes, not just objects. So that means services, guidance, tools, and spaces that help them feel organized, safe, and confident are in demand. Singaporeans, even average ones, understand how to build that. And that's because they lived through it. If you want to build a brand, start with calm. If you want to sell a product, package it in logic. If you want to open a center, let it run on structure, not hype. You already have the operating system they want. You do not need to learn a new one. You just need to translate what you take for granted into something new for them. The third insight is trust. Chinese consumers trust Singapore brands and Singapore people. Not because of price, but because of consistency. That is why Singaporean tuition brands, medical centers, even small consultancy firms have been quietly expanding in Tier 2 China cities. Not in big, flashy moves, but in controlled rollouts, where reputation spreads by word of mouth. And this matters, because Tier 2 cities are still small enough that word travels. A single good service can grow simply through neighbors and friends, but only if it delivers real quality. So what can you do right now? Start by recognizing the gap. What you take as normal might actually be highly valuable elsewhere. Singapore's education habits, healthcare routines, planning systems, even customer service culture. All of it can be productized or translated. Then look at the Tier 2 landscape. Do some research, maybe take a trip. See the contrast for yourself. Ask questions, study the mood, and listen to the pain points. You do not need to move, you just need to explore. Because right now there is a generation of people in China trying to build what Singapore already built. And many of them are willing to pay to have it delivered. That is not charity. That is market demand. And you, as someone who lived it, are uniquely equipped to fill it. If this gave you a new perspective, comment below and let me know. What part of old Singapore do you think they want most? And how would you bring it to them?